Welcome to the Groundbreakers Podcast by Shorooq, the multidimensional investment firm from the Middle East and North Africa. If you're new to the show or the channel, join our community. Don't forget to leave a like, share, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to stay updated with our latest news and episodes. Your support obviously helps us build more valuable content for founders. Today, I'm excited to have a prominent figure in the blockchain industry, best known as the co-founder of the Mantra chain. With a strong background in finance and technology, John has been instrumental in developing decentralized financial solutions that empower users worldwide. As of today, the February 12th, 2025, Mantra token has a market capitalization of approximately $5.7 billion. So welcome to the show, John.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Glad we're able to finally do this.
Absolutely. So let's really start with a big picture question.
Sounds
The
good.
regulatory landscape for crypto and blockchain has been evolving, with Paul Atkins, known probably for his pro crypto stance, being anticipated as at least the next SEC chair. How do you see this impacting platforms like Mantra?
Yeah, so I mean, first I appreciate the shout out to Pripco, another
Exactly.
another
Yet
Shorooq-
another portfolio.
another Portco, good friend of Mantra as well. I'll be seeing Amira later, so we'll make sure to let her know that Shorooq is adding value in that regard. Um,
Absolutely.
but we've always taken regulation very seriously, and it's good to see that the industry is really embracing it a little bit more favorably this time around. So, Mantra's been around for almost 5 years now. I mean, we'll be celebrating our fifth token anniversary in August of this year, but I started working on it in May of 2020, so we're almost at 5 years, on the dot. Um, and we've seen the regulatory landscape evolve significantly, and it's come primarily from places like the UAE, to be quite progressive and innovative and pushing the boundaries. Whereas in other markets such as the US, it's been a little bit slower to adapt. Up until recently, it's been quite combative, even at times, with the industry itself. So yeah, obviously, we welcome a generally favorable crypto, policy advocate in the SEC. Um, I think from our side, having looked at regulation, and we literally operate on a global, plane now. We have to see how we operate and where we want to take risks and how we want to manage risk at a global scale, from day one. And that is a challenge when you're a startup because compliance is hard, compliance is costly, it's difficult to understand in one country, let alone in the entire world. And I think as a crypto founder, the two biggest risks that are always on the table that people ask me about is less about market dynamics because everyone's affected by that, less about competition because honestly, at least in my side, it's still very early. But the two biggest ones are technology risk, hacks, exploits, things of this nature, and compliance risks. And it's a question of are you going to get hacked, and is the founder going to go to jail? Literally, like that's how serious it is, and we take that very well. I mean, it's one. It's an industry that because of I don't think it's an industry that's necessarily like more predisposed to fraud. I mean, anything has that ability to be, fraudulent, particularly if you're dealing with money and finance and whatnot. But because there is an element of a public market that people can buy and sell and interact with, there are rules that should be, generally adhered to, right? And currently there's not explicit rules on how you can operate some of these things or how you're supposed to do something explicitly. And again, I don't think that many guys go out there, particularly the bigger guys. I don't think a lot of them go out there intending to do things wrong. But in sometimes they get out, ahead of themselves or do something wrong and try to make up for it, and that ends up, being a little bit of a snowball effect in the wrong direction. So that's definitely a challenge that we see every day, and I think having clear regulatory framework, having clear guidance, having a conversation is really, really important. And at least here in the UAE, and in other markets, that conversation has been going on for some time. In the United States, it hasn't really been going on. It's really been like two opposing forces, butting heads. So having someone pro crypto, understanding the technology, and an advocate of the space is obviously a very net beneficial thing for the industry as a whole, but also with Mantra. And we are not seeing this on just a local UAE level. We're actively looking on a global scale, and honestly, the US is a massive market, so we're excited about it.
So I want to stay on kind of blockchain regulation for a moment. And Mantra is obviously heavily focused on tokenizing real world assets. We brought in Amira and Pripco, and probably a few weeks ago, you've also done a partnership with Mac Properties.
Yep,
And prior to that, it was Mag Properties. So, what specifically are the types of assets that you prioritizing?
yeah,
And maybe for those who still do not know what RWA is, maybe just
yeah,
a quick simple definition. And then
sure,
why do you believe prioritizing these categories would probably offer the most potential for Mantra at this stage?
sure. Yeah, so just a quick summary of kind of RWA or real world assets. Really, it's just any sort of tokenized product or asset that has a real world value that can be then conferred into a token on chain, on a blockchain. Um, it's honestly a pretty horrible acronym in my opinion. I don't really like the term RWA, but obviously we're an RWA chain or RWA ecosystem. Um, it's really more about the idea of tokenization. So, some of the areas that we heavily focus on from a tokenization perspective are real estate and other ones that include kind of like financial products, financial instruments, or capital markets type of things, funds. These are really the main areas that we're seeing a lot of traction, seeing a lot of attention. And we have specifically chosen those two amongst many for a number of reasons. Obviously, having strong partners like Damak, like Mag, in the UAE, working with Zanbank, being very close to to Vara and some of the other regulatory bodies here in Dubai and elsewhere, other Emirates. It's a big industry here. It's like the hottest real estate market in the world. You have the right stakeholders around the table who have an interest in actually progressing tokenization from just being, hey, let's tokenize an SPV or like the shares of an SPV structure. So basically just putting another layer in order to create a token around it.
Mm,
Rather, what they really want to do is tokenize the actual title. So I call that like direct tokenization or native tokenization. That's something that I think only maybe one or two places in the world have ever done, including in like, I mean, the small places like Luxembourg. They've never done it on the scale here. They've never done it in a market of this size, but that's a very interesting endeavor that, when done with the right stakeholders on the table, legitimately moves the needle and creates value through tokenization rather than just, again, doing this like faux tokenization work, which is creating a token around another layer of legal structure. That's not really how you're moving, and innovating the industry forward. So that's really, really important for us. That's why we believe the UAE is going to be the epicenter of real estate tokenization, and obviously with strong partners like Mira behind us, and Talal from Mag. I mean, these are people who are movers and shakers here. On the other side, we're seeing capital markets products. Money market funds, private credit, other sorts of kind of fund instruments. We've done something with Novus Aviation, which is aircraft financing. Big ticket items, big finance all coming on chain. It's a pretty clear use case. I think it makes sense for a lot of people. It's an access play, it's a fractional play, it's a lowering the barrier to entry play. And then I think there's an element of composability, there's an element of cost savings, and an element of just, being more efficient, frankly. So that's obvious. Go ahead, please.
and probably you need the security and the regulatory compliance landscape to actually adapt to this and to be willing to play around
Absolutely.
with you on these. And probably as Mantra positions itself as a security first RWA layer one blockchain, how do you ensure you're aligning with the different stakeholders from the owners of the asset like the Max
Mm,
of the world and the regulatory bodies here,
sure.
and you're probably in the middle, right? You're like serving all sides here.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't personally see ourselves as like a one-stop solution provider in the longer term. I really see us as a technology provider. But because this is basically all new, it's all novel and it's all never been done before, we are currently a one-stop shop in terms of technology providing, legal and strategy advice, structuring, interacting with regulators, BD distribution. I mean, we're working on every single facet of the value chain here, because again, we really feel that it's important to get real world use cases that work, that again move the needle, that really do actually create value rather than just doing it for an announcement. And I think the reason we've seen it like this, or I'm quite fervent about this, is real world assets tokenization is not a new concept. And it's been around and it's been something that people have been trying to do for years, myself included. I've been trying to do this since 17, 2018. And it hasn't worked because if you're not moving the needle, if you're not creating value, it's just creating tokens for token's sake, and that's not going to help anything, right? You need to do the hard work, and the hard work is really getting those right stakeholders on the table, getting the regulatory buy-in, getting the people to actually, do something that's a pilot, but it's a step in the right direction for where this can go in the future, and that's why we're really fortunate to be in this market because we see that from every level of from the sovereign participation all the way down to the retail, everyone is aligned in that direction and they want to be part of this story. So that's a unique thing to the UAE, honestly.
And it's quite refreshing actually hearing somebody in the blockchain and crypto space talking like this. So hats off, John, because
Thank you.
I don't meet many who have a very similar stance towards efficiency, creating value, and
Yeah.
not necessarily just token for the sake of token. And I think talking about tokens for the sake of tokens, I mean, there's a lot of noise coming from the US. Beyond the SEC, we're seeing broader shifts in the political landscape with figures like Elon Musk stepping into influential roles. How do you see things like these changes shape the crypto regulation, and does it have any impact on how Mantra operates?
Um, it definitely does. I mean, we're impacted by everything. We're, a top 25 project now.
Wow.
Um, there, yeah,
So repeat
a lot
that,
of
top 25.
top 25 by market cap. Yeah. Um, so we're at this level where we're involved in every conversation and honestly like everything that impacts the industry absolutely impacts us, right? So whether it's these idea about like meme coins and kind of like regulation coming out of the US or like any different narrative that's popping up has a direct impact on the market sentiment and it directly impacts us because when you go on to CoinMarketCap or CoinGecko, we are in the first list of people and that's where you see. So the way that we are taking that in stride is that we firmly believe that Mantra is just at its beginning stage. We know we launched our chain at the end of last year, which is really like the core underpinning you know protocol or technology that then will allow us to create this RWA ecosystem with different applications, different use cases, different assets on our chain. And we're only like 3-4 months old at this stage. Not to mention that there's still clearly a lot of work to do from a regulatory perspective. There's still clearly a lot of ecosystem development needs to happen. So we really just are super super bullish on the long term outcome of where this is all going to go, irrespective of us, but just generally where the industry is headed. So I think having the right people start being part of that conversation in a positive light whether it's U.S. regulators, whether it's U.S. financial institutions, whether, again, a lot of regulators take direction from SEC, and they wait to see favorability there. And it it must be a positive thing that there's a favorable SEC commissioner. I think you saw it in the election. There's a You can't be a pro or sorry, an anti-crypto candidate because there's a significant amount of U.S. constituents who are going to have a problem with that. And that's not a political comment from myself. I'm not a single issue voter, but I think it is critically important. And I think we understand that.
Yeah. And thank you so much for kind of bringing a lot of clarity here. Now I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about technology.
Mm,
One of the aspects that kind of makes Mantra a bit special is its integration of decentralized identity through things like soulbound NFTs.
mm,
Um, Again, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but
sure,
how does this, in your mind, how do you enhance identity verification, user onboarding, and kind of uh, improve the overall regulatory compliance of Mantra
sure,
with the technology that you have today?
for sure. So I think we've been quite forward thinking in our approach to this. And what I mean by that is not necessarily that we're creating the most novel technology, but we've been thinking about this idea and trying to implement it for years now, which is actually we're starting to see that the broader industry is accepting and replicating the model. And effectively, the model is that in order for real world assets to go mainstream, you need to have both the kind of compliance and onboarding and identity functions of a permissioned system. What I mean by that is you need to, not ask for permission, but you need to be identified. You need to make sure you're AML, KYC compliant, these type of things, because institutional partners really, really care about that. I mean, they're more worried about risk, they're more worried about compliance and regulatory issues than they are about any financial up, you know, uh, uptake that they can get from launching coins and tokens and things like this, right? So having this permissioned ecosystem is very, very important. Um, from a real world asset perspective, you really need to be able to issue in this permissioned layer. But at the same time, where are the actual people on chain interacting with things, right?
Mm,
Currently, they're interacting with things in a permissionless DeFi native or crypto native experience. And that means you need to have both sides, right? You need to have a permissionless blockchain or permissionless ecosystem that then can have an attraction from an asset-based perspective and from maybe an application perspective of reasons for these people over here in the permissionless area to come over to the permission side of things. But the way that they're able to do that is by having this, decentralized identity or, on-chain identity that they can say, hey, I'm a legitimate person. I'm passing my AML and KYC checks. Now I can go interact with all these different real world assets and do it in an interesting, compliant, safe way. So we're seeing that that's basically becoming the industry standard. And we're, fortunate that we've been thinking like this for the last 2 years. Hopefully that makes sense.
And I think you brought up that for it to be mainstream, you need to be able to bring both worlds to speak to one
Yes,
another, because you
absolutely.
can't just go mainstream in one bubble, right?
Yes.
And I think that will just make the space very crowded. So probably
Mm,
what comes to my mind is that how do you maintain a competitive edge afterwards? Fast forward a few years, probably you won't necessarily stay a one-stop shop for everything as you
mm,
probably are today. How do you stay competitive? Or you know what, you're
sure.
not going to compete. You're gonna, you will have a very different strategy then.
Um, I mean, there's an element of competition for sure. I mean, I am probably the most competitive person that I know. I mean, maybe even too much sometimes, to be honest. Yeah. Um, yeah. So I I think the way that we think about this is we need to know where we play and we need to know where we don't play. And we need to know what we focus on, what makes us out, stand out versus what everyone else is going to be doing irrespective. So like one example of this would be the user experience today doing things on chain or with real assets honestly is not that great. Um, but there's a lot of people in the industry in general, not just specifically to real world assets, that are working on improving the on-chain user experience. So we made a very conscious decision that yes, we need to have a good user experience, but our differentiator is not the best user experience. Our differentiator would be our licensing positioning, are geographic focuses, UAE being the one of the big cornerstones there. So leveraging our network, leveraging Shorooq's network, leveraging our connections into to key stakeholders in the ecosystem, that gives us an advantage here. And we feel like this is one of the places that's going to lead the charge for the next wave of adoption. um, and then also focusing on distribution. So honestly, this is back to like that idea of um, doing the hard stuff that's not just about creating tokens, like doing the thing that actually moves the needle rather than doing something for an announcement,
Mm.
right? So I think with our like very, very clear focus on those things being our secret sauce, so to speak, it's not that secret. It just is what it is. We just are like very clear what we do and we just want to do it better than anyone else. That's how we win. And we know we're not going to win by being like the best user experience because if you're the best user experience, but you're not talking to regulators, you don't have any distribution, and you have no access to assets, you're going to be a pretty horrible RWA chain or RWA ecosystem, right? Um, so, so yeah, that's kind of how we think about it, and just very laser focus on that.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say you're laser focused on what really, really matters to you and your customers. So
Yeah,
everything else kind of fades out to noise, or you probably can
yeah.
focus to it when the time is right. But that's how you kind of maintain that competitive edge. I think, many today probably see, investing in crypto or blockchain as an alternative method to investing, or yet another
Mm,
asset class to invest in,
yep.
as gaining a lot of traction globally, even in locally in UAE, and the wider region. So probably mantra chain is one of those chains where I could invest into tokens, and build towards an asset backed token in a sense. um, I, I would like to know, how do you position token today,
Mm.
knowing that many are investing in the crypto token space, and they would like to kind of do you aim to capitalize on that growing trend of investing in tokens or crypto? Is that a plan?
Um, Yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously, we're constantly looking into the market and figuring out new ways to be attractive and new ways to provide liquidity and utility to our token holders. So that includes like, we have three clear OKRs for success for this year. And those are all surrounding ecosystem development. And then there's obviously a lot of metrics that support this, and we can, measure how we're doing. But the three main focuses this year are like integrations for the chain with major centralized exchanges. The Binance's, Coinbase's, the Korean exchanges of the world. We actually just announced and are getting the chain listed on Bybit, which is a tier one leading exchange. So they're doing the mainnet integration. We literally just announced that yesterday, so that's awesome. So moving towards our OKRs, starting to tick stuff off tick stuff off, which is good. Um, Applications on chain. So actually, what can you do with Ohm tokens? How do you have utility? Can you, put it into a staking pool or a vault where you can earn some yield? Can you collateralize it and borrow? Can you do different types of DeFi activities with your tokens aside from just using it as a reason to, have gas? So it's obviously a gas token for the L1. Um, and then the other one is around assets on the chain. So how do we bring high quality products, high quality assets like Damak assets, like Mag assets, like some of the things that we're working on with Libre, in terms of tokenized funds, or with Novus in terms of tokenized aircrafts, things of this nature. How do we bring these on? How do we generate TVL? Right now, I feel like we're in this Uber mode where, we have this effectively sovereign on-chain economy, where we can incentivize different economic activity in our ecosystem. And just like Uber, when they were growing, they were subsidizing activities that they wanted because, again, they had to basically convince people to get in strangers' cars, which was not the norm. Like, you didn't do that. That was a scary thing, and there was a lot of risk there. And they had to change the behavior of people. And honestly, what we're doing is changing the actual behavior of how people invest, how they trade, how they interact with different types of things. And by doing that, we're having to go through a process of incentivization of these assets, of these users, of these institutions. And that's quite important because over time that just becomes the norm. But if you look at Uber now, Uber's the premium pricing, not the cheap one. And we eventually see that happening where there will be a take rate, there will be a fee, there will be something. But until we reach that kind of like switch, right now it's really more about, hey, this is an early stage opportunity from a RWA perspective. I mean, there should be trillions of dollars of assets on chain, and right now there's tens of billions. So we still have a really, really long way to go. Um, and eventually that becomes, again, an underpinning of why Ohm is effectively, and by the way, I have to say, not financial advice always. We're seeing Ohm as effectively a beta play onto real world asset tokenization as a construct and as a narrative.
So, thank you so much. This was great, JP. And I think one last question that probably
Mm.
can be divided into two. You've touched on those three main, I'd say, verticals that you focused on
Yep.
for this year. Would you say it probably is going to be your focus for the next 5 years? Do you see any, probably in the grand scheme of your vision, where do you see Mantra in like five years from now?
Mm.
And then my next one or second part of the same question is, um, who do from this platform, from Groundbreakers, who do you go out to call to actually join Mantra's mission?
Mm. Yeah,
If you had a call
great question.
out there, who
I
are
have
you
some in mind.
calling
Yeah.
out for? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, amazing. Okay. So I guess for the first question, if you just look at those three things that I just mentioned, the first one that I was talking about, which is, exchange integrations, that becomes, I don't want to say irrelevant, but it'll be done within the next few months, honestly. Um, so I think that will definitely shift. I think it will shift into more of a technological focus. I mean, we want to continue to upgrade our technological stack, make it easier, make it more seamless for these assets to be, interacted with, traded with, built on top of, and create this like almost protocol money Legos effect is kind of how we describe it in crypto. Um, but bringing assets on chain, that will continue to be forever a goal for us, right? And I think I put out a tweet. Um, I guess late last year where I wanted to have 20, or sorry, not 20, $100 billion of assets on Mantra by the end of 2026. And that even still is a drop in the ocean to where it could be
Hmm.
in the big scheme of things. So, but that's a lot of money. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
lot of money. And we're working towards that. Um, Ecosystem development, applications building on top is critically important. But I do also want to see connectivity into the more institutional sphere. And we touched on it a little bit, like trying to find that middle ground between the retail, the crypto native, and then the institutional tone and voice and kind of experience. Like, if we get that right, that's, in my opinion, the $1 trillion opportunity for Mantra. And that's where I see us going, right? Um, that's really where I believe if you get that right, real world assets become blockchain's iPhone moment.
Hmm.
And that's the, up and to the right to infinity and beyond
Inflection
type
point.
of,
Yeah.
yeah, inflection point. So,
Yeah.
um, so yeah, so we're heavily focused on that.
And who do you call out for
Yep.
to join Mantra's mission?
So, we're in this mode now of trying to attract like-minded builders and founders and folks who want to participate in our ecosystem, whether it's directly with the team or just building your own product and platform and novel idea on us. And we want to help support you. I believe we're going to be launching our ecosystem fund shortly that will be supporting builders. So I'm sure we'll be able to talk a little bit more about that. That'll be exciting. And we're doing a number of other things that will help support people to actively build on our network and to actively be part of this community and ecosystem. So builders, come one, come all. We'll happily support you. We want to invest in you, and we want to have you part of the journey. Um, Obviously, we want to continue those conversations with regulators around the world. We want to legitimately show from a practitioner's perspective what's going on the ground level, and then apply that to real world applications of licensing and governance frameworks and whatnot. So that's a very interesting conversation, and frankly, we're already doing that. So excited to do that and continue to do that more. And then anyone who's interested in tokenizing assets, if you have an idea, if you have a high quality product behind you, high quality assets, we're always interested in learning more and seeing what we can do. But I will say, we don't just want to tokenize assets for tokenization's sake. We want to do something that, again, is moving the needle, is adding value to the issuer, the investor, and to the end community. Um, because there's no shortage of people who want to tokenize things and then think that it's an infinite money glitch, that you just have money coming out of thin air to your tokenized product. That's not necessarily the case. We obviously want to do things that are a bit more sustainable and, really are impactful.
Love it. John, this has been a very insightful conversation. The work Mantra is doing in security, tokenization, and even the regulatory compliance space is kind of paving the way for the future of blockchain powered finance and companies. So thank you so much for joining us on Groundbreakers.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Really enjoyed it.
To the viewers and listeners of today's episode, just remember to check the description section below for relevant links and resources. Visit our website at shorooq.com. Obviously, leave a like or share this episode with somebody that you would like them to learn more about Mantra, and most important, even subscribe to the channel for you to receive all the new episodes that we'll do in the future. Till next time, this is Tarek signing off.